It's springtime. Anybody excited about spring? Yeah. That wasn't what I was expecting. It's springtime. No, it's not. Hey, like that, but the grass is getting greener. Have you noticed that? Like leaves starting to pop out, flowers. Like, right? My allergies are feeling every bit of it. Like, has anybody got allergies? You live here. I learned I'm allergic to here. When I first moved here, I didn't even know that I even had allergies. And then I came here, and this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I'm going to talk about it now. I couldn't breathe, and I kept losing my voice, and I couldn't understand this. And they're like, well, you probably have allergies. This is the worst place to live if you have allergies. Well, that sounds like one of those just like exaggerated phrases. Look it up. We live in the worst place ever. ... if you have allergies, okay? So I learned that I get shots every week, and it's still, my face feels like it's about to explode right now. So sorry for that. Welcome to the return, gang. We are jumping in, like what Rickmer said. We've got some sunshine the next couple of days. It looks like it should be absolutely beautiful, and just in time to get absolutely miserable come Saturday. If it rains like crazy, we'll figure out another plan with the hike. But if you've been with us, you know what we've been walking through with this series. If you're new tonight, if this is your first time, I'm going to try and bring you up to speed real quick. Basically, here's the way this works. We've been in this series. We've been working through these passages where there's these I am statements of Jesus. We've been walking through the Gospel of John over the last handful of weeks, where Jesus is making some pretty serious claims about who he is. Like, he's saying some very bold and strong statements about who he is. And here's the deal for us. We live in a world that has plenty of opinions about who Jesus is. And we have plenty of platforms to share those opinions quite freely. And in that, we can find all kinds of perspectives, all kinds of beliefs, all kinds of opinions about who Jesus is. Is he the Messiah? Is he the promised one? Is he the Son of God? All these words that maybe we hear when we're in church. Or is he just straight crazy? Like, was this all this made up? Were these things that he maybe said or kind of said and everybody took it and ran with it? Are these things that like he just meant well and kind of had this plan that made sense, that it'd be really good for your life? Or was he actually seriously saying these things? All right? And no matter where you look in the world, you're going to find all kinds of opinions about all of it. But I think it's going to come back to this every single time. Your choices matter in this. And you've got to ask yourself, is whatever I'm learning about who Jesus is he worth believing? And if he's worth believing, he's worth following. So I think those are pivotal questions that we've got to ask ourselves. Is he worth believing? Is he worth following? Because I think Jesus has a lot to say about who he is and who he claims to be. And as I said, if you've been with us, we've been walking through the Gospel of John, looking at all of these bold statements. And if you look behind me, you can see these are the ones that we've walked through so far, that I am the bread of life. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I'm the resurrection and life, like Tyler shared last week. I am the light of the world. And this week, we're going to be talking about I am the way, the truth, and the life. All of these statements where Jesus has said some very strong things about himself. And the reason why we're looking at them and the reason why John even wrote them is to help us come to terms with who he is. And then when we think about all of that, we've got to acknowledge, okay, well, who's John? That's something we maybe should ask ourselves in the first place. John is a close disciple of Jesus, and he's recording all of this stuff with that heartbeat so that what we would believe is that Jesus is the Messiah, that he's the Son of God, and that when we believe, we would have life. That is the heartbeat, the intent of why he even drafted the Gospel of John through the power of the Holy Spirit. That we would recognize the invitation to believe Jesus, and that we would recognize the reasons to receive Jesus. It's twofold. It's not only that we would put our faith in him and believe, but that we would have all kinds of reasons to follow him and to trust him. But what we find is this. You've heard us say it. Tyler said it last week. I've been saying it for the last several weeks. What you believe about Jesus does not determine what is true about Jesus, because truth belongs to him. Our choice, whatever we want to believe, that is not what decides who Jesus is. Whether we choose to embrace him or we choose to reject him, our choice, it doesn't change him, it changes us. And that's why it matters so much. There's just really no middle ground with Jesus. And in our world, we want to find middle ground on everything. We don't want to be pinned down to anything. That's why we use emojis. That's why we use Bitmojis, because how many times have you ever gotten a text message and you feel the weight, the responsibility, like they know I have my phone on me. They know it's like in my hand. They're looking at me from across the room. They know I'm even looking at it. They expect me to text back, right? You feel the weight of getting back to somebody. And then they ask you that thing, you're like, I don't know what to do with that. So you give them that ambiguous emoji face that you're like, nobody knows what to do with it, because don't pin me in. Don't pin me in. But you met the expectation of getting back to them. I think we live in a world that, like, man, we don't want to be pinned down on anything. We want as much gray area and as much middle ground as we can. Jesus doesn't leave room for that. He leaves room for doubt by all means, but he does not leave middle ground on who he is. And so for us, as we look at this, each week we're getting glimpses of who Jesus is and why it matters that we know him. Every year, about this time, I have the privilege of leading a group of us to Romania, to Tinka, Romania, to work with Forget Me Not Ministries. This is something for the last 10 years I've been getting to participate in. I've got to lead a ton of teams. And some of you are like, you've gotten to go before, right? Some of you, you're about to get to go again. And some of you are like, I'm about to fly on a plane and I've never done that before, okay? But here's the thing. Here's where I'm going with this. Every year I have the opportunity to go on this trip. And it's an incredible trip. It's a very powerful trip. It hits me different every year. And the privilege of getting to take a whole bunch of people and introduce them to a whole bunch of kiddos that can totally change their perspective about how to live life back here. It's an incredible opportunity. The way we see what God's doing in his global church, but the way we see God at work here when you come home, different. Because it changes the way you spend your money. And it changes the way your relationships unfold. It changes the way your priorities are made. All of those things come into play on this trip. It's an incredible trip. I absolutely love it. But I'll tell you right now, every year, some of the hardest conversations I have every year are explaining to my kids why they can't come with. Like every year, I'll come this time, some of the hardest conversations that I have, period, are explaining to my son and my daughter, Lila, our littlest. She doesn't care yet. She's just like, life in the dream house. Barbie, anyone? You guys need to watch your cartoons. But Ezra, who's about to be 11 years old, and Kala, who is 8, every year, they just want to know why they can't come with. They long to go with. Now, my kids. They're financially invested. They are supporting some of the kids connected in this ministry. They get to FaceTime with them on a regular basis, but they've never got to go with me. And every time it's hard for my heart because it's such a good thing. But every year I find myself in conversations that their maturity, it's growing every single year. But it's still hard to leave them at home. And it's hard for them to let me go and share their daddy with everybody else. They just want to come with. They want to see what I get to see, and they want to be where I am. My heart aches over that. And so I spend all this time trying to prepare them for my departure, trying to prepare them for, all right, here's the way this is going to look. But Daddy's coming back. I'm coming home. And someday, I'm going to get to take you. I'm going to get to take you over there. Someday it's going to work. And I spend all this time and all this energy reassuring them. And it's because something pivotal is happening. These moments where they're understanding like, okay, life is a little bit different right now. I have to share someone that I love, and I can't go where he's going. And that story, that concept, that idea has just been landing on my heart so much in the last stretch simply because of the conversations I'm having with my kids right now, but also because of the words that we're going to unpack tonight as we dig in on these words of Jesus in this story. The context of what's going on. I couldn't help but see all that. Last week, Tyler, who did a great job last week, if you're here, yeah, he did a great job, walked us through Jesus' claim to be the resurrection and life and this miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead. And tonight what we're going to do is move from John 11 to John 13, 14 in that pocket and spend some time talking through this short window that's happened in between and dig in on the next I am statement of Jesus. Now, a lot has happened. since Jesus just raised Lazarus from the dead. Jesus has since come into Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. He's come in with a triumphal entry. That means everybody's pumped. I mean, it's like the Hosanna, like, come, come, come. Messiah, you are the one. We're putting all the eggs in this basket. We're pumped that you're here. All right? That begins to unfold. But also, you see this distinct shift between Jesus' public ministry with everybody. All the other I am statements to this point have been to listeners and crowds that are then making a decision, which is why every single time they're divided. They're either choosing to follow or choosing to walk away. It's a very public setting. But you see this movement, now that he's in Jerusalem, preparing for the Passover, to a very private, focused ministry with his core disciples. Okay? And he leads them into the upper room. And what you see happen is this conversation that unfolds. He spends time washing their feet, serving them, embodying his whole teaching that the way we love and the way we serve is to put others before ourselves, that it can't just be our words, it has to be our actions. He talks repeatedly that it's death that's around the corner for him, but there's still hope in it. He talks over how Judas is about to betray him, and then Judas does get up, peace out from the meal, to go get to work in betraying Jesus. And he even has this moment with Peter, where Peter is having this conversation where he just kind of jumps in as Jesus is kind of helping them all see, because he's preparing their hearts for his departure. Because less than 24 hours from this conversation that we're talking about tonight, Jesus will be crucified. And so over and over again, all of these things, they're trying to piece it together. Jesus tells them this in chapter 13, towards the tail end of it. He says, now he tells them that we got a little time left before he's got to leave them. But they want to be able to come with. And Peter has this moment, which Peter, the more you get to know Peter, he's very characteristically like always in an outburst. He just says what he's thinking, whether it makes sense or is appropriate or not. And Peter just blurts out, he's like, wait, where are you going? Like, hold up, wait a minute. Like, he's trying to process this moment, and Jesus kind of like reiterates, and he's like, you can't come with me. You can't come with me now, but you'll get to come with me sometime later. And Peter immediately just responds, was like, I'm ready to die for you. And it's like we read that, and we're like, maybe that is like, what? Like, well, hold on, you just jumped to something right here. And Peter is saying this because that's what's on his heart. That he wants to be where Jesus is. And so Jesus responds with, like bro, like you're ready to die for me? Like, before the sun rises in the morning, you will deny that you even know me 3 times to anyone who asks you about me. And Peter, all of them, they don't know how to process all this. And this is where we find Jesus and his disciples, and they're anxious. They're very anxious. They're really worried about everything. They're trying to process all that Jesus is telling them, all that they've witnessed Jesus do in this last stretch. Because think of it this way. For 3 years at this point, they have been following Jesus around everywhere. Everywhere that Jesus has gone, they've come with. All of the miracles, all the teaching, all of the walks from town to town to town, they've been with him for 3 years. That wherever he goes, they go. They're learning from his teaching. They're learning from his example. And all of their hopes are in him. They are riding on him. They see him as the Messiah, as the promised one to deliver. Even though they don't totally understand what that means, they believe he's the one. Think about that for just a second. Have you ever been there? Like, you believe who Jesus is, but you don't really understand what you're supposed to do with that? Like, you're like, yeah, I could tell you all the things I learned in Sunday school, or I could tell you, like, this is what I'm supposed to believe about Jesus. But what I do with that, somebody's got to tell me, right? Have you ever found yourself wondering, like, okay, I'm anxious right now. I'm struggling right now. I'm struggling to trust right now because I hear you saying all these things that I don't know what to do with. Because I believe you to be the Messiah, but my perception of who that is maybe not exactly what you're telling me it should be. Have you ever found yourself in that boat? Maybe that's where you're at right now. Or maybe that's why you're here right now. depending on where your story has taken you, depending on where you've put your faith, where you've put your trust. I mean, how many times have you found yourself in circumstances that you don't understand, and it's hard to trust that things are moving in the right direction? I think that's hard, and I think there's a lot going on here. So let's look at what Jesus says next. In chapter 14, I'm reading from the New Living Translation, just the first handful of verses. He says this, right after he's just called Peter. I'm like, dude, you're going to bail on me here in a second. He follows with this. Don't be troubled. You trust God, now trust in me. There are many rooms in my Father's home, and I'm going to prepare a place for you. If this were not so, I would tell you plainly. When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am. And you know where I'm going and how to get there. No, we don't know, Lord, Thomas said. We haven't any idea where you're going. So how can we know the way? So let's stop there for a second. Jesus says, like, don't be troubled. He's like, trust in me. You trust the Father. You trust God. Trust in me. These guys, their minds are racing with all kinds of questions. They want to be where Jesus is. They want to go where he's going. They don't understand why he has to leave. They don't understand why he has to die. They don't understand all that's happening right now. And they're anxious and they're worried and they're fearful and they're bewildered. How are we going to get to where he's going? Their world is about to be rocked because Jesus' work on earth is about to be finished and theirs is about to begin. Jesus knows what's about to happen. And he steps ahead of the devastation that they're going to feel, and he starts speaking to their comfort. He starts telling them what they need to hear, what their hearts need to hear. And he speaks comfort over their hearts. He speaks assurance over their hearts. And he promises, I've got a plan. I'm going home to get things ready for you. That there's a plan in place. There's a promise in place. There's purpose in this. He's preparing for them. He's preparing heaven for them. He's going to come back and get them. And he says that you know where I'm going and you know how to get there. And that's when Thomas is like, no, we don't. Like, I don't have any idea. You ever had a professor explain something to you and then like it's in the syllabus, I told you, and you have that feeling of like, I have no idea what you've assigned to me. Anybody? Yeah, we've got some honest people, right? The rest of you are like, no, I nail it every time. Yeah. No, you don't. Thomas is like, I have no idea where you're going. Like, he literally, it's not this like annoying tone. It's like he's genuinely confused. He honestly doesn't understand. He's just like, how on earth would we know where you're going? You keep saying you're going somewhere, but you're not telling us where. He's confused. Some of you are thinking about, that's what my friends do. They tell me they're going somewhere, and then they don't tell me where they're going. It's because they didn't want you to come, okay? That is not what Jesus is saying. Sorry, did that hit too close to home? Sorry. Some of you are like, that happened today. Sorry. Tangent. So once again, Thomas is caught up in the literal. He's tripping over the literal. He's not grabbing a hold of metaphorical. Remember how Tyler shared last week, how like when Jesus is telling them about Lazarus and their response is basically like, why would you risk your life when he's just taking a nap? And then Jesus has to be like, guys, he's dead. Okay, and like, oh, we should go then, right? Like, this is another moment just like that where he's like, I just told you. And Thomas is like, I don't get it. Where are you going? Jesus is promising, he's promising that he's not going to forget them. He's not going to abandon them. But where he's going, they can't come yet. And there's hope in that. But heaven will be ready when it's time for them to come, because heaven is home for God's children. That's the way this whole thing works. And before we get to Jesus' answer to this question, how on earth do I get to wherever you're going, that Thomas asked, I want you to grab a hold of this. There's something in Thomas that I think is what helps our hearts be receptive to whatever truth comes next from Jesus. And it is this. Thomas just wanted to be where Jesus was. He just wanted to be where Jesus was. He didn't really care how he was going to get there, because in chapter 11, he's like, I'll die with you. if you want to go back to Jerusalem, if you want to go back there, I'll go. I'm ready to die with you. He's the same guy that gets so much slack for doubting Thomas because he just wanted proof that Jesus had really come back from the dead. And in this moment, all he wants is to just be where Jesus is. He couldn't see what's ahead, the unforeseen, confusing future in front of him. He just wanted to know that there's a way to get there and that there's a way to find that way. Does that make sense? What he wanted was to know how to get to where Jesus was going to be, because all he wanted was to be where Jesus was. And I think that speaks to us right now, because I think so much of the time we can't see what's coming. And we'll put our hope in all kinds of things. And what we're really trying to find out is there a way to where I want to go with my life? And is there a way for me to find that out? That's the same thing that we wrestle with. It's the same thing that Thomas is wrestling with. And it's the same response. Don't be troubled. Don't be troubled. Trust. So let me ask you this. Is your heart anxious right now? Do you know why? Is your heart troubled? Can you tell me why? Is your heart trusting? And you can tell me why. Do you see the difference? Thomas just wants to be where Jesus is. So do you want to be where Jesus is? Do you long to be in close proximity to where he is, to his presence? Do you want to be where Jesus is? And I'm going to encourage you with this. Choose to want to be where Jesus is. It's a choice. Choose to want to be where Jesus is. And when you do, the invitation and the power and the authority in what Jesus says next, it will completely change the course of your life. Because what I'm about to read next is what everything hangs on. And it's the stuff that doesn't change him. Your choice changes you. In verse 6, Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. This is the sixth I am statement. I am the way. If you want to come to the Father's house, you have to come with me. I want to take a look at this closely so that we can just honestly absorb the magnitude of what Jesus is saying here, because we can't skip past this and be like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, moving on. No, we need to absorb the magnitude of this. Because each week we've looked at all these phrases and all of them carry weight. Each week, whenever Jesus says, I am, it's referencing something in all of his listeners' ears. They're all hearing Exodus 34 in the back of their head, where God says to Moses, I am who I am. Every single time they hear this, that is ringing in their ears. It's this incredibly intense way to refer to yourself. When you say I am, it's literally grammatically, it's talking about like I myself, only I. There's exclusivity in this. And if you go back through the Gospels, you're going to find all kinds of little moments. You can write these down. Matthew 22, John 8, even Matthew 28, when Jesus says, I am with you through the end of the age. All these moments where he's saying, I am. Each time he says this, the Jews are hearing this as Jesus calling himself God. And we can't pretend to soften that. Each time he's claiming to be one with the Father. Each time he's equating himself with the Father. That's why they're trying to kill him. It's because he's claiming to be God. It's not because he's like, hey guys, I got some good ideas and it'll be great for your life. I mean well. No, that's not why they're trying to kill him. They're trying to kill him because he's claiming to be unique. He's claiming to be God. I mean, if you look, you skip ahead to John 18, when they come to get him in the garden, to come to arrest him. And they approach with all the soldiers and everything, and they come and they say, they come up to him and Jesus says, who are you looking for? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth. And he says, I am he. In that response, if you read it, it's the craziest thing. And sometimes people skip over it. You know what happens? When he says the words, I am he, all the soldiers fall backwards. Because there is power in these words. They reflect the very name of Yahweh God, the self-existing one. There's power, there's authority in this name, and Christ Jesus claims it as his own. That it is only him. That's heavy. That's very heavy. Let's break this down a little bit more, because I think we can learn more when we see the way it actually reads out. This is what it would say in the original language. I am the only way. I am the only truth. I am the only life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I mean, our world, though, right? Our world, our culture is repulsed with the idea that there's only one way. Because that would mean we can't all be right. And we love to be right. And sometimes we love to tell people they're wrong, but so much of our culture right now says we can't tell anybody that anybody's wrong because we're all right. That's what we want to keep telling ourselves. And what do? The world wants as many ways as possible, because the more ways there are, the more justifications we have for whatever lifestyle we choose to live. We can remove ourselves from any sense of responsibility if we just make more ways. We don't want anyone having that kind of exclusivity. What Jesus is saying, it completely flies in the face of this idea of you being the center of your own truth. Grab a hold of this. Jesus is emphatically exclusive and unambiguously unique. Jesus is like no other. Like no other. When you think of what a way is, you think of a course, you think of a path, you think of a route, and you think of all the times where Jesus is saying through the Gospels, follow me. I mean, what do you do with a running course or a walking trail or a path through the woods? You follow it, right? Over and over again, he's saying, follow me, follow me. There's no other path to heaven. There's no other way to the Father. He doesn't just teach the way or point the way. He says, I am the way. This is why Peter, who is hearing these very words later in Acts when he's preaching the gospel, this is why he can say salvation is found in no one else. There is no other name under heaven given to men in which we must be saved. All roads don't lead to heaven. He's not just the only way, though. He's the only truth. That's why this is so heavy. Psalms 119, 142, you can write that down and check it out. This is the psalm writer says that the law is the truth. Talking about the law of God, this standard of holiness and righteousness, of what it looks like in our lives. Labeling it as truth. But in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, Sermon on the Mount, over and over again, when you read Jesus' words, he's talking about the law. He references the law, and then he says, but this is what I'm saying. You've heard this said, but I say to you. And each time he says that, he's equating himself with the law of God. Each time he's saying that, he's equating himself with the authoritative law of what it looks like to be in right relationship, upright living, to be in right relationship with God. In Matthew 5:17, he even says that he came to fulfill the law. He didn't just come to knock things off the to-do list. He came to fulfill the law. Jesus is claiming to be the source of all truth, because truth belongs to him. But he's not even done there. He's not just the only way. He's not just the only truth. He's the only life. And he's just told them he's going to die. And now he's telling them, I'm the only way to live. And they're trying to process this. And that's what we've been learning, right? John 10, John 11, all these passages that we've been taking a look at. Jesus has authority over life and death. And so this only life that he's talking about, this is a life of freedom. This is a life of true deliverance from the bondage of sin and death that is in our world. This is a life of freedom for eternity. This is what he's inviting us to. And he's saying he is the way to God because he is the truth of God and the life of God. No one comes to the Father any other way. Your works can't save you. Your religiosity, your routines can't save you. All of your offerings and your sacrifices, all of the things that you try to set before God to bargain to say, hey, look at me. Do you love me a little bit more? None of them will save you. Only Jesus saves you. And this is as bold as you're going to get, because in this moment, he is summing the whole thing up. And the question it leaves us with is, do we believe that? And some of us would be like, I don't know. And I think that's a good thing. But some of us, we're going to be like, I believe that. But our lives maybe aren't telling that story because we're so afraid of offending the people around us. We're so afraid of them thinking we think this of Jesus, that we're going to hold him to what he actually says. You cannot approach God with this fixed definition or idea of who he is and then try to fit Jesus into it. That's what we do when we say words like, or phrases like, what's true for you doesn't have to be true for me. When we say things like that or we encounter things like that, let me just say this. Any honest investigation of any worldview on planet Earth, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Shintoism, Taoism, Confucianism, Mormonism, any ism you can think of, any philosophy, any science, anything, any honest investigation of them will reveal that we can't all be right. We can't all be right. I believe there is absolute truth in this world, and Jesus says it belongs to him. And I'm telling you right now, if you investigate, there is no way to investigate any of this and with any philosophical and academic integrity claim that everything is equally true. It's not possible. As much as our world is trying to tell us that you can believe whatever you want and there's no consequences, those are called lies. Those are called lies, and they will lead you down roads you don't want to go. Truth belongs to Jesus. And he says, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. So whatever the journey with Jesus looks like, it always leads home. It always leads home. With this claim, though, comes the invitation to accept or reject. In the following verses, he carries on to say, if you had known who I am, then you would have known who my Father is. From now on, you know him and have seen him. And Philip said, Lord, show us the Father and we will be satisfied. See, he still just wants something tangible in front of him. They're still not getting it. And Jesus replied, Philip, don't you even yet know who I am? Even after all the time I've been with you, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. So why are you asking to see him? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I say are not my own, but my Father who lives in me does his work through me. Just believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Or at least believe because of what you've seen me do. Opportunity to reject or embrace. I mean, he goes on and uses this word know so much. If you had known who I am, you'd know the Father. You'd know that if you see me, you see him. You would know. If you had seen me, you've seen him. John uses that word know 141 times in his gospel. 4 different ways. The first way is just knowing facts. The second way would be understanding the truth behind those facts. The third way would be relating to someone, like in a relationship, like you know they exist and you can be friends. The fourth way is deep bonding relationship, deep communion. Guess which one he's using here? A deep relationship, a deep communion. Knowing and seeing Jesus is the same as knowing and seeing the Father. He's claiming once again to be God. We cannot mistake that. His words, his work, both come from the Father. You can't separate the two. You can't separate his words from his work. So to know Jesus is to know God. And so my question for us is this. Do you believe this? Do you want to be where he is? Do you want to know him in that way? And does your life tell that story? Because I think that invitation awaits all of us, whether we've chosen Jesus or not. Bottom line, it doesn't change him, it changes us. Our choices. There's no need for a troubled heart when Jesus is in control, when Jesus is the only way, the only truth, the only life. There's no need for trouble when Jesus is the bread of life, when he's the light of the world, when he's the gate and the good shepherd, when he's the resurrection and the life. There's no need for trouble, but there's room for trust. And it's interesting, I think, because when Jesus is in his rightful place in our hearts, we need not be troubled. Did you take a look at what all the Christians were called before they were called Christians? They were called followers of the way. And I think that's beautiful because I think, here's what it tells me. They were known for clinging to this claim. Before they were known as Christians, they were known as followers of the way. And it's because they were clinging to this claim right here. That when Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, no one comes to the Father except through me. They were saying, when Jesus says, just stick with me, they're saying, I'm going where you're going, and I'm sticking with you. Where are you at with that? Because I'm telling you, that invitation is always there. But if you've already claimed him as the one you're sticking with, wouldn't it turn this world on its head if that is what people knew us by? Oh my goodness, it would tick everybody off, wouldn't it? But would we be troubled or would we trust? Our words become believable when our lives love Jesus, when we cling to that claim. Let me pray. Father, thank you again for tonight. Thank you for some beautiful sunshine. And thank you for your word. And thank you for your truth. Thank you for making a way. Thank you for being life, for being truth, for being the one that loves us enough to not leave us where we are. Stuck. Trying to earn something we can't, that we already have. Your love. God, help us choose you and help us long to be with you and help our lives tell that story. We love you and we trust you in Jesus' name. Amen.